To day 2 of RightScale Compute 2013. Please welcome back to the stage Josh Frazier, Senior Vice President, Business Development and Sales at RightScale.
You can tell there was a cocktail hour last night. There is coffee downstairs. Anyway, welcome back to RightScale Compute. Welcome to day 2. What we're going to do this morning is actually we have 3 RightScale customers who are going to come out and share their experiences with cloud in general and then RightScale specifically. And then after that, we're going to invite Michael and Torsten as well as the 3 speakers back and do a little panel. So there'll be plenty of time to ask questions. So if you wouldn't mind, please don't ask questions with each individual customer prezo. Save those until the panel, and then we'll have all 5 guys up for the panel. So our first speaker is Joe Emison. Joe is CTO and founder of BuildFax. He also has the interesting distinction that he actually wrote the first .NET iPod app. So with that, Joe Emison, welcome, RightScale Compute.
Hello. So I'm going to talk to you about, I think, a parallel story to what you heard from Samsung yesterday. I read that story as we are going to approach the hybrid cloud from a HA and DR perspective, and we know we're going to save some money at it, and we know it's going to be better. I'm going to talk about this from the perspective of I'm cheap, and I wanted to save significant amounts of money by moving to a private cloud. And then I knew as well there would be some HA and disaster recovery, business continuity benefits from that. So let me start by telling you a little bit about what BuildFax does. BuildFax has the only national database of building permits, which is very exciting, I know. You all want to go to buildfax.com and pull reports of building permit histories on your houses. And so what we do is we go to building departments and we ask for their electronic building permit data. And they give us building permit data in a variety of different formats. Oracle database dumps, SQL Server dumps, PDFs, you name it, text report formats. And we take all of those, we call, we spider, we do lots of things. We take all of that data and we standardize it into a single database through a pipeline, a data pipeline. And then we run some analytics on that database, and then we sell that out mainly to insurance and to mortgage lenders, residential mortgage lenders. And the main thing we tell insurance companies, our most popular product is we tell them the age of roofs. We say this is how old your roof is. These are how old the roofs that you're insuring are. And with lenders, the main thing we do is we score property condition. We say this property is in a very good, updated condition. This property is in a non-updated condition. And those are very popular products because no one else can provide that information to those industries. When we do this, we built all of this on the cloud, on AWS, starting in 2008. And everything in this pipeline that we have runs on a VM. So we have a VM setup which will turn a SQL Server database file into a bunch of CSVs, turn an Oracle database file into a bunch of CSVs, process PDFs, etc. And so our statistic here is on average, we use 5 ephemeral VMs which get launched, run, and then kill themselves for every data set that we send through the process. So the motivation here was we built all of this on Amazon Web Services, and it was wonderful and fabulous. But we were paying for things we didn't really need. We had internally facing tools, and we had these VMs that could die and we could restart them, but we were paying for the power redundancy, the network redundancy, the engineers on staff, the high quality that Amazon provides. We were paying for all of that, and we really didn't need it. We could really use commodity hardware at our office for a lot of that. And so we looked at our Amazon bill, and this may be a very tiny bill for many of you, so you could just add some zeros mentally in your head on it. But we had bought reserved instances properly, and so the on-demand instances here really were flexing up to 900, 950 instances at a time, sometimes to process data and then dropping quickly back down. So we were looking to dramatically drop this number, which would make a big difference for us. And we knew that we would get some high availability and some disaster recovery benefits from going to a hybrid cloud. So these were the requirements that we put on the hybrid cloud. We needed interoperability with our existing server templates at RightScale. We needed to be able to launch the same things on our private cloud. We needed to have good business continuity rules for when our commodity hardware died, because we were going to reuse hardware that we just had in our office. And so we knew that it was going to fail. We had to be able to fail back to Amazon when we needed to. And then we needed it to be cheap, because that was the driving motivation here was, can we save money by moving some of this load back into our office as opposed to having it all on the cloud. So this was our execution plan. And we started this roughly 14 months ago. Let's use commodity hardware. And that's really a picture of the rack that we have. That rack sits in our office. It is not in a data center. It is just sitting in our office. There's a wall mount air conditioner next to it. We had all these servers from previous things. We spent some money upgrading RAM, bought some hard drives. We spent about $5,000 on that. We decided we were going to fail over to Amazon and VPC specifically, but we were going to use the storage gateway. And so we had a very specific problem. We have about 3 or 4 terabytes of data that we need to be able to have online for our business continuity. And we needed an RTO of about a recovery time objective. We need to be back up within about 20, 30 minutes. And we wanted a recovery point objective of about the same thing. And we couldn't find another great solution for how to make sure that that data was going to be available on the cloud and locally beyond Storage Gateway. So many of you might not have looked at Storage Gateway. It's really cool. And it enables this exact idea of, I want to have data locally that I'm writing, but it actually all is getting stored in S3, and at any time, I can take snapshots from it and pull EBS volumes off that and have those up in the cloud. And it works. It's great. It's very cheap. I think we spend about $200 a month on Storage Gateway. So it's excellent. And then finally, using RightScale and Chef within the server templates to be able to manage all of this through a centralized console. So this is the network diagram that we have, and I put this in here mainly so that if you want to get this set of slides afterwards, you can look at it, and then you can send me emails. I'm not going to go through it extensively, but this, if you're curious as to how we do things, this is how it works. And so the end result here is that in the most recent full month of data that we have, we're down. We've dropped the EC2 bill by half. Still reusing reserved instances, and I think we can drop it another $1,500 or $2,000 a month beyond this by running more of our variable loads in the private cloud. And we may grow the private cloud, actually buy some servers for it in order to continue decreasing the cost. But we've achieved significant savings here, and this doesn't even account for the decrease in savings of not having to buy a lot of the reserved instances that we needed to buy before. We also have a much better business continuity plan. So in the past, if US East went down, as it's done from time to time, because we're EBS reliant, so that time that April 22nd outage, we're not reliant on that. And if our office burns to the ground, we can, assuming we can relocate people to another computer, we can be back up and running within about 20 minutes on Amazon's cloud. Some other brief thoughts about this. I would like if there were equivalents to Storage Gateway in other clouds, so that we could, and I would like if there was some level of abstraction to interact with it. But right now, as far as we found, there wasn't anything with that feature set of Storage Gateway, and so we use it. But I'm less concerned about our risk to Amazon there, because it's fundamentally a backup, and it's you think of it as it's a warm backup that costs us $200 a month, which is absolutely fabulous. So that's the summary of our private cloud on a hybrid cloud on a shoestring. I'd be happy to answer any questions about it later. Thanks.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. Joe's also an outspoken commentator on cloud, and you can follow a lot of his stuff in Information Week, so please check it out. Next up, we have Roy Ellis from Progress Software. He's the principal software engineer over at Progress. And also want to send our special appreciation and thankfulness that they're okay. Progress is based out of Boston, so all of our friends and family at Progress did just fine last week. So glad to report that. Roy Ellis, Progress Software.
Good morning, San Francisco. Good morning, San Francisco. All right. How's everybody doing today? Most of you actually look awake after the party last night. So just to see if you're awake, Progress Software. How many people have heard of Progress Software? You, the most I've ever seen. And I've been to Progress Software conferences where they haven't had that many hands go up. Another quick question. How many people are 30 years old or less? Okay. So I just wanted to see because, you'll see why that's important. All right, so my favorite agenda in the whole wide world, because it doesn't tell you anything, but it gets me started. Progress Software has been around for 30 years. So those people that raise your hand, it's been around longer than you've been alive. Okay? We're based out of Bedford, as you heard, but we have about 1,600 employees. We're worldwide. We have development in Massachusetts, in Morrisville, in India. We sell all over the world. We started out in a little dentist office in New Hampshire, so everybody's office had running cold and hot water. What does Progress do? Well, Progress has the best database on the third planet from the sun. That's been quoted. Of course, it was quoted by the guy who wrote the database. And we have application development tools. Our tools and our database are what we sell to application partners. So we don't have an application. All right? We sell it through our partners. Here are some of the facts. We have a lot of partners. We have a lot of applications out there. I like this one. 1,000 people each day become new Progress users. 1,000 people each day. I didn't know we were this big. I want to raise. We are probably the most used, least known software in the world. I blame our marketing team, but... So, our job is to make our partners successful, because we don't sell our software to anybody but partners. And SaaS is the fastest growing software market out there. So we have customers who've been selling to brick and mortar for years and years and years, and they don't understand SaaS. So we had to help them move into the SaaS environment. Software as a service in our licensing is growing at 20% year over year. Our brick and mortar licensings are selling about flat, or 1 to 2 or 3% every year. So we have to help them get into the situation and get into the cloud so they can start doing SaaS. So when they make money, we make money. Okay, so how do we get them into the cloud? Well, we decided to create our own vending machine, right? Something very simple to get them into the cloud. We like to call it the big, simple Fisher-Price buttons, the standard colors. Everything is very well laid out for them. There are predefined doors for activity. If you want to go out and stage and test your product, it's there. If you want to look at the Progress products that are new, the newer versions, they're in the showroom. If you've built a demo and you want your salespeople or, God forbid, a manager to have to use it, it has to be simple and it has to work. So that gives you the demo door. When they do this, everything is predefined for them. There are templates, there are applications. So when they get there, all they have to do is pick a door, click a button. They'll be using best practices. Our product will be installed for them automatically. All they have to do is put their application out, and they're out in the cloud within 12 clicks. Somebody actually counted that. I think if it went to 13 clicks, he would have got it wrong, but 12 clicks got him in. Okay, so this is our stage and test. Down here at the bottom, the Progress deployments. This is something everybody can see. There's a predefined list. You can expand them and see what you want. In this case, this is an app server with a replicated database. Our replicated database, it can have a GUI client, or you can actually run a front end. From here, they would pick what they want. They would create a copy of it. This is where you create your deployment. Once your deployment is created, it moves up into the My Deployments. Now, all this is a deployment. It's ready to be launched, ready to go, but it hasn't been started yet. We wanted to separate it. These people haven't done clouds. So what we do now is we select it, we start it, and when you start it, you pick where do you want it to run, how large the images are. Again, usually we have defaults that customers are going to need. So if it's a web server, it's a small machine. If it's a database, it's a larger machine. So if they just pick all the defaults, they're up and running right away. And then once it's running, it goes into the My Instances part. So again, very simple. They're up and running right away, and a big button up there that says connect. When they want to connect, gave them the IP address. Okay? This is what we envisioned when we went to see RightScale. And we sat down afterwards and we said, well, we can do this all ourselves. We'd be locked into one cloud, Amazon, because that's what we were working with. Or there's a company out there called RightScale that already does all this stuff, and we can just create something on the front end and call in their APIs. So this is what we did. But the question was, would RightScale work for us? And RightScale worked for us because of this notion of tags, the RightScale tags. Actually, we did this about 2 years ago, and we were talking with them. I said, okay, we have to be able to do these things in this environment. Can we? And they're going, well, I think we can do that with tags. You know, that's them saying it, not me. So we were pretty new at they were pretty new at the tags then. So we went ahead and we used their tags to filter the owners and the doors. Remember, everybody can see what's in the progress deployments, but once you create your own deployment, it's my deployment. No one else can see that in that company. Only you can see it, okay? And only you're running it. So again, you control your machines, but not anybody else can get to them. They also use the tags to share IP addresses and deploy the instances so that they can talk. We have several web products. They run out of the Apache Tomcat, the Java servlets, things like that. And they have to talk to our backend, our app server and our databases. So they have to start up automatically. Again, we don't want our customers going in after they're starting up and changing things to get them up and running. It had to come up and running within a few minutes, and it had to be working right out of the box. They had to be able to push a button and see that it worked. So how did we do that? Our app server on the back end, walk in front. Our app server on the back end would set a tag, an RS tag. In this case, it's called our name server because we have a name server that gets you to the app server. It would start that up, it would set that tag, and then we would have a web server, the Apache Tomcat, that would start up and it would wait until the tag returned. RS tag, query name server. When it finally got that, it would loop. When it finally got that, it would do all the work it needed to do in write scripts to modify all our configuration files, which are specific to our product only. All right, so they're not like, you know, typical load balancers and things like that. And then once everything was up and running, we would restart it. So when the customer came up and started running our product, he could run a quick round trip and test it right away. Okay? So now we have 2,000 customers who are out there trying this in the cloud. And we have about 100 that are actually actively using it right now. Many of them won't ever drink the Kool-Aid, but that's what we got. We also are unique in the fact that I think we have over 250 accounts with RightScale. We have a parent account. We have all these people under our accounts. And we run about 2,500 images every day for all these different customers and ourselves. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Roy. So Roy's doing part 2 of his presentation tonight on Jimmy Kimmel at 10:30, so tune in there. Our last speaker is Chris Henry from Behance. Behance was just recently acquired by Adobe last December, so congrats on that. They also have a unique distinction with RightScale. They were one of our earliest Rackspace Cloud customers and our first RackConnect Cloud customers. So Chris Henry, Head of Technology for Behance.
Good morning, folks. I'm Chris Henry, Head of Technology from Behance. I'd just like to thank the guys from RightScale for letting me come and chat with you for a little bit. So, what is Behance? Behance is the leading online platform for showcasing and discovering creative work. Creatives from across all industries, as photographers, illustrators, designers, just anyone who creates amazing work. Come to us, they will post it, they'll use it to collaborate, they'll use it to promote themselves, and ultimately get jobs. So, as a dev team, that kind of leads us to a whole bunch of challenges since we are, in effect, a portfolio site and a social network. So, I've been with Behance since the very beginning. The day I showed up, we actually launched the very first website. So, pardon the graph, because that was actually 2011 when we were doing 51 million page views. 2013, we're doing 122 million page views. So obviously, that's taken quite a bit of hardware to scale and a whole bunch of infrastructure changes from day one. So the other very, very interesting thing about Behance is that we've been an extremely small team from the very beginning. For a very long time, it was actually just myself running infrastructure. Then in the past couple of years, we've brought on a couple people. Ko Ichiyama, who's sitting right back there. And one of the ways that we've really been able to do this over the past 6 years is choosing the right partners. So we work with Rackspace as a hosting provider, and that's actually been really, really crucial to us. One person can actually maintain a very large number of servers and the infrastructure below them. So we've been really happy with that. As the site has grown and we've needed more and more different pieces of the infrastructure, particularly automation and particularly being able to provision lots of cloud instances to do a whole bunch of different things, we've worked with RightScale, and they've really helped us be able to automate that with a very, very small number of people. So our architecture is slightly different. So we have half physical managed that Rackspace runs for us. Then we also run in the Rackspace public cloud. And we've connected the two using a product called RackConnect. So what's really great about this is that we have all the control over our physical servers. It's all managed for us. Then we also have all the flexibility of the stuff in the cloud. So we've been able to kind of divide up our workloads based on those two things. The last really interesting point about that is that there is a network connection between the two, which allows us extremely low latency connections between the two. So whenever we have a new application come up, whenever we need to re-architect our application, we have a whole bunch of different choices as to what we want to do. On the physical managed side, we can bring up ridiculous hardware. We can bring up SSDs. We can bring up machines that have quad-octal CPUs, to really kind of take care of some of the more intense loads that we have. Some of our search apps, for example, require that kind of hardware. MySQL, we're a big proponent that MySQL, for the moment, should probably be run on physical hardware. Plus, again, running with Rackspace, we get lots of support. We get great advice from DBAs. And using the F5 load balancer that they provided for us, we have really high availability, still redundant. So now a couple use cases that we have for the cloud. Being in an organization that deals mostly in creatives, these folks mostly want to upload images to us. And creatives are very picky about the way their images work. So we stumbled upon a piece of software called ImageMagick. It's open source, and it creates the sharpest images that we've ever seen. Our design team swears by it. However, running it is a little bit tricky. It likes to do weird things like, take up all the available memory on the machine, write several gig files. So running it on physical servers was pretty difficult because we can never have enough to actually have enough up and keep up with the load. So the first thing that we really used the cloud for was that image service. So we were able to spin up a dozen instances, have them load balanced, have them high availability. When something bad happened to one of them, which was fairly often, the load balancer was smart enough to just pull it out of the pool. So we had a little bit of a self-healing cluster that would always be up and always be able to process images for our users. And then a couple other basic things, like we have crons, batch processing, things that we absolutely want to have separate from our web tier, because some of the things that we do there can be particularly heavy. So the last thing that we have actually had an extremely good experience with running on Rackspace Cloud is MongoDB. So as a social network, we're really focused on how engaged our users are with each other, with other people's work, and make sure that there's a really great way for them to discover new things and be able to collaborate. So what we came up with was an activity feed kind of in the style, a little bit of Facebook, but it's different in the sense that it's a fan-out approach for all of our users. So it's extremely write-heavy, and you need really good disk access, and you need to be able to scale those writes. So MongoDB was a really great fit for us. And it really just kind of started out as a very small cluster in the cloud. We had, actually, has anyone used MongoDB before? Okay, a couple people. So one of the most interesting things about MongoDB is that you can actually scale writes right out of the box. It has a clustering technology where all you have to do is set up a couple shards, and you can write to all of them at the same time, which is a lot different from many other open source and free databases out there. So we started using that, and we found that it was a good fit for the cloud because as as writes were happening, we could continue to spin up more and more instances and just continue to add to the cluster and just go wide with it. And we got all the speed and performance that we really wanted. Sorry, not quite done with that. So my next point here is that when it comes to running very large clusters of MongoDB, it's great because as things go up and down, MongoDB handles it. The other great thing about the cloud and what RightScale has really helped us with in this cluster is that we've actually been able to iterate the server templates that we use to power it. So we started with something that was very simple and very basic. It was just your standard Rackspace node. It worked pretty well. And then as load got higher, as more people started to use this, as this became a popular feature of the site, we knew that we needed more and more write performance. So we moved on to ext4, and we were able to write scripts to do that. And we were able to use those write scripts to do a whole bunch of other things, which kind of contributes to some of our DevOps mentality. Like as we wrote code to provision servers, we were able to use it in other places and kind of contribute to that as well. So yeah, that's all I have for you guys today. I hope I gave you guys somewhat of an idea of some really interesting use cases for the cloud. So that's it.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate the talk. All right, now we're going to move on and invite all of our speakers back up, and they're going to be joined by Michael Crandell, our CEO and founder, as well as Torsten von Eichen, our CEO and founder. CTO, excuse me. We have mics in the audiences. Where are my mic folks? Okay, we got one over there, one over here. Great. So just raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question. We'll get in as many as we possibly can. But for now, I wanted to invite Chris, Joe, Roy, Mike, and Torsten. Come on out, guys. First off, that's a good-looking crew, isn't it?
That's right.
All right, gentlemen, thanks for joining us this morning. Guys, thanks for your talks earlier. Let's dive right in. I want to throw the first question out there. So yesterday we heard a lot about multi-cloud. Michael shared some stats. I think 77% of customers from our survey had responded saying they either had a multi-cloud strategy or were interested in adopting one. We heard a little bit about what you guys are doing all around the cost front, but what does multi-cloud mean to you now, and where do you see that going in the future, specifically for your businesses? So maybe, Chris, you want to start there?
Sure. So as a social network, people expect us to be up all the time. So one of the things that we're really hoping to do is have failover capabilities for a lot of our features. And one of the challenges there is making sure that data gets where it needs to with very little delay in between, and that's one of the things that we hope to use it for, and it's one of the challenges that we hope to overcome.
Where do you actually see, I find that there's a level of that we solve where the different components, the different ways that the clouds function is something with multi-cloud images, with the server templates. We understand how to deal with that, but the communication problems, right? That ends up being the sticking part. How is that sort of where you spend most of your effort when you think about it, or?
Oh, what's that? I'm sorry.
Is that the level you think you spend most of your effort?
Yeah, we do spend a pretty significant amount of time thinking about that.
Yeah, certainly data shuttling is really difficult, and Amazon recently now at least lets you move large quantities of data between regions, and some of the cloud providers have those back-channel networks, but there is no good multi-cloud massive data storage migration solution yet, and so yes, it would be great to have that solved.
So Google mentioned they're working on the speed of light problem. Yes.
That's excellent. I think one other thing
there's hope.
that's important. multi-cloud is also about cost savings as well. It's about people cost savings, because the more you can rely on things actually never going down, the less people you need to be available at 4 in the morning to put things back up. So, I mean, that we view it in that way as well.
Roy, looks like you guys haven't found that to be the case yet.
Early on, the question always came up with us because our customers are grilling us. Well, is the cloud unsafe, right? You know, it goes down. I heard Amazon went down last week, and my answer always is shame on Amazon for going down, but shame on you for not having a backup. Just because you've moved your system into the cloud doesn't mean you've abdicated your right to have a backup system, right? And one of the reasons we went to RightScale is we're Amazon right now, but what we want to do is have a backup in another cloud if that's necessary. And we're waiting for our customers to tell us what cloud that should be.
So you're not asking for 100% SLA?
I am not. I believe that people need to have backups. They need to have a way to recover. I spend a lot of time in front of customers who keep saying, backup? We don't need no stinking backup. Yes, you do. That's your business. So.
One of the things that kind of changed about engineering in the cloud now is that you absolutely have to engineer everything that you write for failure. So that's a huge difference between having a backup and having an application that stays up and then potentially gracefully degrades depending on what features you use. And that's something that I think a lot of dev shops may not always think about, but absolutely should.
So do you think of the outages in the cloud as being worse than in other environments?
Do I think of it as being worse? No, I personally think it's much better. I don't think we have as many outages. I think there's a lot of smart people out there working on it. We have a lot of, I don't want to call them mom and pop type, our applications are sold to small places where people don't know the software, they just want it to work. SaaS is perfect for them. But they go down and it's hours. They don't have any idea how to fix it. They've got to call someone in. The Amazons and the Azures, and they're out there making sure it's up and running. And I think they get better service with that. I believe that. But it doesn't mean that, I can write it and put it in Amazon and never have to worry about it again. No, you still have a responsibility.
So what are the right questions customers should be asking then? Because we get asked all the time, what's your SLA? What's the cloud provider's SLA? Joe, I know you have an opinion on this from your exchanges after the Christmas Eve hiccup, if you will.
It's interesting. The philosophy that I have is, one, SLAs should be punitive to the vendor. They're not about you. They're about making sure the vendor feels extreme pain when there's an outage, which affects a lot of customers. And that's what you want, because you're not going to get compensatory. I mean, we make far, far, far more money off our servers than we pay. And so it's ridiculous to assume a compensatory SLA. It's just silly. So SLAs need to cause pain, and that's all we look for. And then we look, from a multi-cloud strategy, what we look to do is, what are the minimum number of features that we can implement, preferably through an abstraction layer like RightScale, to use this service. Don't make me take on additional features that I don't necessarily have to. Don't make me use your memcached service when I can run my own memcached servers.
Yeah, it's really right. Can you explain what happened and what are you doing so it doesn't happen again?
Right.
Yeah. That's oftentimes we open tickets with AWS because we're seeing something. The great thing about the cloud is that we can react. We have tools. We can relaunch. We can launch somewhere else. So we're okay. But we want to make sure that they're seeing that and that they react and that they fix it.
Joe, if I could pick on you, you were telling me yesterday about a particular trick or tip that you had going. I think people appreciate specifics for replication across different cloud environments.
Sure, Storage Gateway. That's what you're talking about, yes? Yeah, the Amazon Web Services Storage Gateway on the hybrid cloud front is fabulous, and I highly recommend it for anybody who's trying to move data. So in the data, actually, that is probably the only tool I'm aware of that makes it pretty seamless to move data from one cloud to another. So you can establish locally with CloudStack or OpenStack or whatever software locally, you can establish a private cloud in a data center, your own data center co-location facility, and you can use something like AWS Storage Gateway to shuttle your data pretty seamlessly to Amazon, and then you can have Amazon serve as your backup cloud or another cloud. So yeah, actually, that is the first entry into how do you shuttle data easily between different clouds.
So that's really for bulk data.
It's for it moves volumes. So it's moving block storage, essentially moving content on EBS volumes very quickly.
So let's questions from the audience.
Woohoo.
Sorry, thank you.
Hi, are you encrypting that data that you're sending up to the cloud
Yes.
through the gateway?
Yes.
And do you encrypt at rest?
Do I encrypt, sorry?
At rest.
No.
Well, so it replicates the volume. So as long as the data inside of the volume is encrypted, then it is also encrypted.
It would be encrypted at rest there. Yeah, I mean, yes, it gets.
I mean, you could. You choose not to.
Right.
Yeah.
Question over there?
Is that service something that you replicate over? Or is that, when you have a large amount of data that now you need to move from one cloud to another, like during a failover, to move your whole database over in a short amount of time? Are you using it for that, or using it for continuous replication of your data?
It's essentially, I think there's some threshold of the amount of data you store. So at some level, I can take database backups and send them to S3 or send them to cloud files or send them to something, and that doesn't take long. And so I can do that every minute or every 5 minutes or every hour, and I'll meet my recovery point objective without a problem. And at some point, it takes way longer for me to do that. And so in my head, I sort of think of it, is that at 10 gigs or 50 gigs? That's sort of how I would think of it, especially if you're going to try to compress it and then send it, which is probably what you want to do, or using the LZIO stuff. But we're well past that. We're at terabytes, and there's just no chance.
You probably have to think about two different buckets, right? You have sort of not necessarily static, but you have assets that you need to ship, and those go well with that. And then you have the more transactional data, where you have to look into MySQL or other forms of database replication. So I think you almost always end up in this two-sided strategy, where you have to deal with the static assets and the transactional.
Let's move on to some of the surprises in the multi-cloud landscape. So Michael, what surprised you the most in terms of other providers emerging, the services you've seen them come out with?
Well, I think I've mentioned it before, but as we watched the last 12 months unfold, some new players got into the infrastructure as a service space that, frankly, we never dreamed. We actually did talk about this 6 years ago when things started, and the question was, would Google ever get into it, or Microsoft, or some of the others. This last year, we also saw HP. So we just saw some large players get into this game, moving down from the platform as a service level because of the popularity of infrastructure as a service. So really, we think that it's the most vibrant time ever in the ecosystem for customers. And that's a big development in the last 12 months and a huge win for everyone.
So on that note, I mean, one thing we shared yesterday was the wide range of different adoption phases that customers are in. But I'm curious from the whole group here, what are the key things if you're at the very early phase that you should be thinking about and worried about and challenges? And then we also have a lot of customers, 3 up here, case in point, where it's really a cloud-first strategy, a lot of experience. What are the challenges for the more sophisticated user that we're seeing?
It must be overwhelming at this point to sort of enter AWS and see the array of services and then all of the docs and the APIs and everything and all the things that are not quite in the docs to know about how you use the services. And I think that must be really the overwhelming.
Is it overwhelming?
Well,
these guys have been
2 years ago there was 3 things in the console and it was a beta, and now when you bring it up, there's 1,000 choices, and that was even back then that was the reason why we wanted to abstract that all away from our customers. They're developers; they don't want to have to learn EBS and all the acronyms and why you want to use this. So that's why we pulled back and we said here's something very simple. Prove that you can get out there and work on it, and then if you need more, you can go to the RightScale console. We make that available. And now we're starting to look at things like using these other tools that are out there for customers who are asking for it, really. I mean, we're just getting to a point where customers are actually starting to seriously look at this after almost 2 years. Our customers, we're dragging them into the 20th century so we can get them into the 21st.
I'm curious, what are they asking for? I'm curious what they're asking specifically.
And one of the reasons we went to RightScale was for multi-cloud. They're asking for, can I put a recovery, a disaster recovery system in another cloud? And can I use disaster recovery? And can I have high availability through other clouds? So that's one of the biggest things. And Fortunately, we actually did some work on our own, knowing cloud was coming, and we have a replication service. So we can drop a replicated database anywhere, as long as you're running on Linux and Windows, and you can just replicate it. So there's no hard way to move data in our case. So that part was easy. It's getting the other cloud up and running and making sure that they play nice, which they do, especially in RightScale.
Chris, how about you? If you could go back in time, what would you have done differently?
So I think one of the biggest challenges that we're actually trying to deal with now is deal with changing workloads. Like I was saying, we've grown very quickly, and it's starting to accelerate even more. So as I was talking about with the MongoDB cluster, what we had to do was initially get it out there, even see if it worked. Once we saw that it worked, we needed to make it better and faster. And now we're at yet another juncture where we needed to continue and make it better and faster. So we're trying to figure out what the right tools for the job are. And one of the things that keep coming up, that came up here at the conference many times, was running private cloud. And making sure that you have the right hardware to support what your needs actually are, in addition to the flexibility to have the instances when you need them. Finding out when those things were going to happen was definitely a challenge for us, and it's something that we're still trying to address. But I think that now that the tools are there, it's just a matter of being aware of them, doing the research within the market, coming to things like this, and making sure that you know what's out there and being able to execute it.
I would say the number one tip that I give people who are adopting, who are certainly moving from on-premises to or hosted or VPS to cloud, infrastructure as a service, is that you need to take a software development approach to your configuration management. And I think a lot of people do it very badly. And they don't realize that you really need, when you write chef recipes and cookbooks, or you're writing shell scripts through server templates, you need to properly embrace versioning. That is code in every bit of the same way that your software code is code. And it's amazing to me to see the just immense number of people who don't do that. I would say the vast majority of cloud deployments don't do that properly.
After a while, one thing that we found is just keeping track of things becomes quite an issue.
Yeah.
I think in March we had 1,800 servers running. That's like 7 servers per RightScale employee on average, or something like that. And it just keeps growing and keeping track of it. And we see that with customers very much the same way. And we're putting a lot of effort into building tools and functionality to keep track of cost, of the sort of analytics, building out plan for cloud, building out the reporting capability. The ability to purchase reserved instances becomes more complicated, because at the beginning I could understand what we were using. I could understand all of the different deployments we had and what the trajectory was approximately going to be. At this point, I can't. I have to rely on statistics, on sort of last month we ran this many instances. Chances are that next month we will need a little bit more. So that sort of becomes one of the challenges.
Sure does. We had a question from the audience here?
Yeah.
Check. Chris, you mentioned that you feel pretty strongly that you should run databases on dedicated hardware. And Roy, Progress is essentially a database company. Maybe you could explain a little bit, Chris, on why you feel so strongly about that. And Roy, maybe you could respond with how you solve some of those challenges with running databases.
Sure, absolutely. So in the hierarchy of database needs, the one that you need that is at the bottom and you absolutely need the most is excellent disk performance. And what I've seen is that that's one of the most inconsistent things in the cloud. I ran some benchmarks, and what I found is that it's extremely, extremely difficult unless you do a lot of work to get a good performance out of disk in the cloud. And that's the biggest reason I feel that way. With MongoDB, yeah, we run a 60-node instance in the cloud, but it's also kind of made for that. Everything is written out to memory map files and then flushed to disk in the background. So it's a good fit. But then when it comes to MySQL, when you actually absolutely need to have IOPS when you need them, my feeling is that the only way to get that is to still run your own hardware.
I guess in Progress's case, we have a database that we have a transactional database. We have people using it to, If you go into Subway and you bought something, it's probably an application written by one of our customers. So it's busy, but it's not really high data. So we have lots of customers out there running now. We have one that does online car rentals, so they're very busy. But they haven't seen a problem yet. I think it's just the fact of how we use it. There's small pieces of data all the time. I get asked all the time with people, should I go to the high I/O? What kind of problems have there been? And the answer I have right now is there's been no problem. Yes, if you test it and you run a lot of transactions, especially reads and writes, it gets really, really slow and inconsistent. But our customers haven't seen that yet. And probably the biggest reason is you can take almost our whole database and put it in a memory buffer. So what we find people doing is buying really big memory for our database because they can load almost the whole database in memory, and then we don't see that. We don't see that disk performance problem.
We've had similar experiences to that. Our database wouldn't fit in there, but we spent a lot of time optimizing application code, using memcached, and just generally optimizing things. And we're at the point now where if every insurance and every lending transaction had to make a web service call to our server, we would still return sub 1.5 second time on all of them. And we could do that with one master and one slave, running C1 extra larges at this point. So I mean, it's yeah. But if we had consumer volume, it would be an entirely different story.
Other audience questions? Let's circle back to you mentioned analytics and reporting. Let's circle back to that for a second, please. And I'm curious on a couple things. So, I mean, Michael, you briefly mentioned this yesterday, but what are we hearing as far as the problem set? And I'd love to hear from the 3 customers. How aware are you in terms of who's got access to what, how much you're spending, how much you spent before, how much you're likely to spend in the future? Does your CFO care? Is he or she paying attention? What's going on there? So maybe, Michael, you could kick us off.
Sure. Just a kind of quick synopsis of some of the things I said yesterday. I think the punchline is that understanding your usage, being able to measure and track it, and have some strategy for how to optimize it has become as important a competency in terms of cloud adoption as the technical side of things. And that wasn't true in the early days. In the early days, was let's get this thing up and running and use it. But we've matured enough, we've come far enough down the path that there is a lot of usage occurring. And now we see it's widespread, and maybe one of the top issues on people's minds is, okay, am I being efficient in the spend? How do I optimize it? How do I plan for the future, et cetera? What are you seeing?
For the last few months, I've been writing scripts and things to figure out what people are doing out there. We have over 125 salespeople, and they like to set up a demo for one customer, and then they walk away and leave it, and they set up a demo for another customer, and they walk away and leave it. Or they set up a huge system with, 5 or 6 large systems to prove something to a customer, and they walk away and leave it. So, you're talking about you're writing scripts with us. I'd like them. I'll give you a Dropbox. You can give them to me before I leave.
Let's talk afterwards, Roy.
It really is the first time the bill came in, and the sales director saw that. They're talking to me. I'm like, I'm not in sales.
Roy, I had the same experience with my team. I found when you start cross-charging back to sales, that'll change.
Well, that's exactly what happened. They got and they're talking.
And maybe we can remind everyone that it is possible to launch 50 servers at one time. Okay? You can do it. You don't need your sales guys to show that anymore. Chris, how about you?
As far as cost goes, I mean, what we've seen is we've done a lot of analysis as far as what we're getting. Like, back to the database question. Like, we want to see what's going on between what we're paying for the physical managed stuff and what we're paying for the cloud. And that's kind of how we've kind of made our decisions about where to go with these things. Then, of course, we've been able to, thanks to RightScale, being able to see, okay, we spun up this many servers, we had this much growth. And that's really how we've been planning. And, for the most part, as a company that's seeing a lot of growth, luckily, the business guys have been like, okay, as long as it's still growing, keep spinning up servers. So.
We've been early users of 3 of the other tools that do cost management. And here's a tip for you. So I didn't know this. Maybe all of you know this, and this is not helpful. But if you have an S3 version to bucket and you delete a file from it, it doesn't actually delete it, and you still pay for it. So So one of those services, CloudIron, offered the ability to find those, and so we cut, I think, maybe $3,500 off our monthly bill by just realizing that. We had no idea what was going on. And because we had so many objects in the store, this was before RightScale launched their S3 browser, it was very hard to figure out exactly what was in there, and so we just sort of threw our hands up and said, well, I guess we can absorb it. But so that was great. And the other one we use a lot of is NuVem. And we found them to be very helpful. We've saved a lot of money by using those monitoring services. And so, yeah, I agree. It's definitely worth looking at it. And S3 has some pitfalls that you should be aware of.
So, Torsten, you're at the tip of the spear on figuring out what we do for RIs and various other discount mechanisms. What would you like to see from the providers to make your world easier there?
Oh, no reserved instances. Give me a better form of discount that I can wrap my mind around. I mean, it's just the whole purpose of cloud is to have the flexibility, and the whole purpose of RI seems to be to take away that flexibility. So it really doesn't. Now, if you have to commit to using a certain instance type in a certain availability zone, and the moment you make the commit, there is some issue in that availability zone. You launch server somewhere else, and you're off the RIs, and you've lost that flexibility. Or you change the software, you can move to, you need larger memory instances, or maybe you can get back down to smaller memory instances, and now you've logged in, right? So give me something that is maybe a commit on revenue or on spend, not lock me into that. So with reserved instances, what I found is that it's really important to drive behavior. Right? You have to make your users launch instances in a way that you can purchase reserved instances afterwards. You have to concentrate on a small number of instance types and of availability zones, so that if you purchase a reserved instance, you have a server running that uses it. For whatever reason, that server stops running, or you need to shift it to something else, that the probability that there's some other server that you have running that can use the reserved instances, you want that to be as high as possible. So you have to actively drive the behavior of your users.
Audience questions? Yes, sir.
Hi. One way to lower cost in Amazon is use spot instances. And this first question is for Joe. For a batch-oriented type application, why didn't you use or consider using spot instances? And then the more general question is, are RightScale customers using automation to get around some of the limitations of Amazon spot instances?
We do use spot instances for a fair number of things. I don't like how long it takes to bid. It's very annoying from my perspective.
Right. So we run a lot of automated tests of server templates and such, and spot instances seem a very logical use for that. The big problem is those launch times. Right, when it takes, a couple of minutes to get the instance launched on demand, and it takes sometimes 20 minutes to get it launched through Spot, and you really don't know how long it's going to take, then it takes a lot of the fun out of it. You're running a 1-hour test, or maybe a 45-minute test, right, and suddenly it goes up by 50% in the elapsed time. And if you have something that runs for longer periods of time, the sort of killing off of spot instance waves that we see in AWS, where, well, who knows what exactly they're doing. If you could, so initially we were hoping that you could see like the price slowly goes up to indicate that there is limited capacity. Maybe a couple of your instances start being killed off to make more capacity available. And then you can start reacting, but that's not the pattern. They all go away without any warning, and that's just the most difficult scenario.
Yeah. That said, just to add to that, we did an analysis of a period last year. End of 2012. I don't remember exactly the period. About 15% of the launches on the platform of our customers were of spot instances. Some of them use them heavily. I think because of the reasons people have pointed out, you have to really suss out your use case and make sure that it fits. But there are some customers who are using it pretty heavily.
Other audience questions? Let's pivot to what's next. So, Joe, what's next up for your cloud strategy plans? And why?
We want to be in two different public clouds. Entire deployment that is load balanced between the two of them with just traffic spread between them. Because I really do. I don't want to have any 4 a.m. worries. And I think if I have that, I can, unless something terrible happens to the United States as a country, I think I can just. I don't have to worry about anybody having that responsibility. So that's where we are. It took us 14 months to get where we are with the private clouds. So I'm not going to hire additional people to do that, so it's going to take us a little while, but we'll get there.
Chris?
So 2 big things on Behance's roadmap. One is I think we're going to start operating a private cloud. It gives us all the flexibility and choices that we want between our physical managed, private cloud, and public cloud. We're going to be able to use the exact right tool for the right job. Then the second one that we're really excited about is I think we're going to move over to Chef, but move over to it in a way such that we can envision our physical servers, our private cloud servers, and our public cloud servers. We're hoping to do that actually about something we found out during this conference, which is Chef Connect. I think that's going to be really great for us to be actually able to write code that can be reused in every single environment that we're working in. And I think it's going to make our team a whole lot faster and keep us small and fast.
We're going to be in at least 2, if not several, clouds, hopefully by the end of the year. Again, mostly for our customers who want to have that backup in another cloud. The other thing we're doing right now is we're creating an APAS front end that's going to allow you to do all of our development and totally build and run your whole product out of APAS. So not our legacy stuff that people are using now. They're trying to get into the cloud, but just allow you to do the full development cycle and the full production cycle out in the clouds, and we decide what cloud you're running in, based on cost and that type of thing. So that's our next step.
Yeah.
So Roy,
lots of things coming down the pike, faster user interface, and I think another big thing is making it a lot easier to plug in third-party services and to use RightScale with a lot of other third-party things. So that's one of the big pushes.
So Joe, Chris, Roy, what else would you like to see from us?
That would be my number one item. Would be make it easier for third parties to interact with RightScale. There's so much great data in there, and there are very motivated third parties out there who would like to do that. So
I'm super excited about Chef. Let's do it.
There's a bunch of stuff I saw here today. The ability to graphically build a template would be great for our customers, so they could build their deployment and their template. So I think Ryan showed that, and I want to make sure I have that for my development team tonight.
The IT vending machine. Yeah. So Roy, I'm curious because obviously Progress, big organization, you have many different infrastructure footprints, if you will. How hard is it now versus 6, 12 months ago to sell cloud and evangelize internally in your organization? And what do people think it is? Where's it going next?
2 years ago, I was explaining what cloud was, and I just found out what it was a couple months before that. Now, every time I hear there's a new cloud project every 10 minutes. We have a part of the company that does ODBC connections, and they just ran up their SaaS ODBC for the first time. We have another part of the company that does financial analysis, real-time analysis, and they're busy. They're really, really geeks. So they're testing every cloud and every situation, and before they decide the first one they're going to go to, and then the second one. So I don't have to do it anymore. In fact, I'm busy just answering questions and setting up things, and the whole company is, and with the APAS product, the whole company is looking to the cloud now. So we're on the way. We're like the train going off a broken bridge. So,
Michael, how about you? What are you most excited about when you look forward 6, 12,
this is going to be an
18 months?
awesome year. It's going to be an awesome year for RightScale. Torsten mentioned a few of the things we're working on. The other side of the UI refresh is an enhancement in building out of the API layer to just let more and more products that work on top of RightScale's core engine blossom. I can't say too much specifically because I don't want to steal thunder from the future, but we'll have new developments around workflow automation that we have in private beta now that are really exciting. You can also expect a lot more work from us in addition to the technology side around this information management part of cloud, optimization and usage and cost forecasting. We're doing a lot more work there to help organizations that are along in their path of adoption. The whole pathway that we see of all these cloud providers that are partners of ours and the advances they're making, there's a whole set of work to keep up with the immense amount of innovation that's happening there, and just making sure that you as customers can get the best from what's being offered by the infrastructure as a service providers. And then finally, on the other side, you're going to be seeing new services offerings come from RightScale. So I think one of the ways that we try to engage with customers is very hands-on, ranging from all the way along the cloud adoption journey that I talked about, early adopters who need onboarding and strategy consulting, through to more advanced projects with more serious professional services engagements. And so you'll be seeing new offerings come from RightScale on the services side too. So it's going to be an incredible year.
How about you, Torsten? What are you most excited about, looking forward, or most worried about?
The multiple clouds, really building out the multi-cloud landscape and giving customers more choice.
Other questions from the audience?
Yeah.
Hi. Do we think there's any other major public cloud providers who are kind of starting to offer their own infrastructure as a service coming up in the coming year? What's your predictions for that?
The answer is yes, and I can't say. Well, one that I think is interesting and kind of a different take on things. VMware did announce that that it itself, not just through service providers, so that's public information that I think everyone can look at. I think the goal there is maybe a kind of a different cut on infrastructure as a service. It appears to be more focused on those who are VMware shops being able to, as easily as possible, move VMware workloads to a hosted service in a flexible and agile way. So it'll be really interesting to see how that fares. And then there's some others that my lips are sealed.
Let's talk a bit about networking, Torsten. I know there's a lot of advancements that we've done around that, and pretty hot area in terms of what the providers are capable of in generally. Give us some of your perspectives.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting how I guess the big picture is the SDN, software-defined networks, and all of the major clouds, whether public or private, are really engaged in supporting software-defined networks. So abstractions from VPC, subnets, network interfaces, multiple network interfaces per host, access control lists, routing tables. Everybody's building that. Of course, just like with everything else in cloud, everybody's building it in a slightly different manner, right? So interesting things like, can a subnet span multiple availability zones? Meaning, can I put my SQL servers or my database servers that I'm replicating into the same subnet and make that span multiple data centers so that I have the availability? Well, it depends which cloud you're using. So I think it's very exciting in the sense that we get this additional set of tools, this additional set of capabilities. On the other side, it's yet another hurdle in the sense that they look the same, they smell the same, they use the same names, but all of the details are slightly different. So that's going to be, I don't know whether there's any more chance to make it similar and to drive consensus. We'll have to see on that. So what we're doing is we're building the network manager, so it's all of the dashboard, API, and user interface in order to be able to manage all of that, and you'll see the first of that come out with the next release. But there's, I think, going to be a long path after that.
The good news is there's a lot of innovation happening in the cloud space, maybe more than we've seen almost in any other disruptive technology trend. The other reality news is that standards normally don't precede innovation, they come afterwards. And so as long as we're still in this period where there's a lot of creativity and innovation, there are going to be different approaches taken.
Hey, Joe, you said you do a lot of cost optimization around your usage of the public cloud. I'm wondering where the major cost savings are coming from. Is it compute? Is it storage? And where do you see this going forward? Is there a level of optimization you get to that you can't do anymore? Or is it a constant monitoring and optimization process that you have to go through?
Well, I definitely think you get diminishing returns, and so then you sort of give up at whatever level you're spending. I mean, our massive savings was in, let's say we had 3 buckets of savings of at least 10% on the bills, and those were moving to a private cloud, so just moving load. Another one was killing off stuff that shouldn't have been running, so EC2. And when we moved stuff up, we also saved on EBS and EBS snapshot storage, so those were there. But there are instances running that shouldn't be running. I mean, I think anybody who's running at least 30 VMs probably has some stuff that shouldn't be running, or it's on a wrongly sized instance. And then S3, S3 is awesome, but it is very, especially if you're using version buckets, it's really easy to just start running up those numbers. So I imagine it's different for everyone else. Like, we use EMR and love EMR, but our total EMR spend is so small that I'm not really concerned about optimizing it.
How big is data transfer?
It's actually not a significant part of the bill in any way.
You guys? No.
Yeah, the running EC2s is our biggest cost, and our biggest bang for a buck is to watch those right now, and then we'll see what the next thing is.
Did we have a question up here, sir?
So one of the questions I had was, so basically, for the multi-cloud thing, you have these APIs to launch a server, right? I mean, those are the basic APIs to launch a server and all that stuff. And we are pretty much in control of that, I mean, at the right scale. But we now see a second generation of services coming from clouds. Let's say CloudFormation, CloudWatch, right? Things which are now more solution-oriented, basically, right? That how would I like to see my solution running in the cloud? Now, Google will come up with its own solution. Amazon will come up with its own solutions. RightScale being a wrapper above that, how will it maintain the quality, an equivalent quality or better quality, right? Because, I mean, you can only do that after AWS has delivered CloudWatch, right? Now, if I see the current state of monitoring in RightScale, it sucks. I mean, it really sucks.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, now, since I'm a customer for RightScale, now I always get lewd. Okay, CloudWatch has come, right? I mean, look at this. I mean, this is much more better than the RightScale monitoring. I mean, how long will I last, basically?
So from my perspective, you can draw a line between services that lock you into vendors and that don't have good portability or just migration scenarios, and ones that have really bad lock-in scenarios. So we use SES, Amazon SES, for sending email. It's awesome. I'm very happy with it, and I really am very happy to, and RightScale has nothing to do with it. We don't do anything through RightScale with SES. And if we ever have a problem with Amazon SES, we will move to Mailgun or SendGrid, and it will be fine, and it will be fast, right? Because that's a very easy migration. RDS is a totally different story. And so the database manager templates work for that. So I think that it's very important to make the distinguishing factor. And then from our perspective, when we look at these lock-in services or lock-in risk services like RDS, we just ask the question, is there any way to implement that through RightScale with abstraction layers? So for me, monitoring, I mean, RightScale monitoring is fine for us, but if I didn't like it, I got lots of solutions that I can plug in that I would think wouldn't have any significant lock-in risk. So that wouldn't bother me at all.
Yeah, so I want to talk to you afterwards, so you can tell me what you don't like and what you'd like to see. But I would also draw a slightly different line in that RDS maybe locks you in the sense that you don't build up the knowledge base, you don't build up the expertise to run your own MySQL or to run maybe the RightScale server templates. There's something different, which is if you're using CloudFormation, for example, okay, there's maybe now OpenStack Heat that implements or tries to implement the same API, which is actually quite a nice thing. But then that's really a totally proprietary and single vendor API. So that's a slightly different.
There's a sort of a range.
That's right. Okay. And we're trying to support. I think we do want to support CloudFormation, but we also want to provide an alternative so that you can accomplish the same things using across different clouds.
Great, thanks, guys. So with that, one final parting question. So Joe, Chris, Roy, anything you'd like to see us do differently for this show next year? We could all wear tuxes. Yuri looked pretty good last night, right?
So more beer? No. I think there was actually enough of that. No, it was great. It's a great location, and I've been going to the Cloud Expos, and I came to the RightScale thing, and I came back and said, I won't be going to the Cloud Expo again, but I'd like to go to the next RightScale. So it's sort of how I feel about it. The Cloud Expo is a lot of, how do I put this nicely, crap. And this gets down to what's important to my company. So,
I thought this was a fantastic conference. I also loved the most interesting man in the world theme.
Oh, that was great.
I thought there were a lot of great jokes out of that. And I thank you guys for putting it on. We actually got a great deal of information out of it.
Yeah, I would say as maybe one of the few East Coasters that we would like to be closer. But that would be about it.
Asheville, North Carolina?
Yeah, put it in Asheville. We got a convention center. Everyone will have to fly in.
Well, guys, Torsten, Joe, Chris, Roy, Michael, thank you. Everyone, enjoy the rest of the day. Thanks for joining us this morning. I think we have a coffee break right now. We'll pick back up at 10:30.